Hello, I'm Kenza Gray, co-owner and curator of Grey Area Gallery, and welcome to our latest exhibition, Tactile. Tactile showcases 4 amazingly talented textile artists: Charlotte Wakefield, Lizzie Kimbley, Alice Liptrot, and Diane Randall. In this show, we've brought the 4 artists together to show the diverse and unique aspects of textile art, and to showcase it as the art form that it is and not craft as it's often dismissed as. This has been a show that we've been wanting to put on for a long time at Grey Area, as the gallery's ethos is to champion art forms and artists and mediums that are often overlooked within the commercial art world. And textile art is something that we've felt strongly about for a long time at the gallery, as it's really an up-and-coming medium. It's something that within the art world has been recognized for a little while, but that recognition is really growing. We see big art collectors and institutions really embracing this medium and bringing them into their collections. In terms of bringing art into your home, we're really passionate about how textile art can bring warmth to a space, dynamism in the way that it's ever changing, the light hitting it in different ways, the free hanging pieces we have in the gallery, for example, how they move as someone walks past. They can really bring life to a space, especially in a modern home which has quite white walls. You can bring that warmth in, or in an older home such as a cottage, it brings that heritage and traditional feel. We're really passionate that this is an art form that everyone can embrace and see the beauty in. We're surrounded by textiles every day, from the bedding we sleep in, the clothes we wear, and I think that this has played a part in people's overlooking of this as an art form. Things such as a jumper you could buy on the high street are hugely devalued in terms of money, but it was really great to showcase the works in here and allow people to understand the time, skill, effort, and detail that goes into creating these pieces by hand. It's also overlooked for its ties through history, with the idea of it just being domestic work or women's craft. And it's been really great to bring these 4 female artists into this space to challenge all of these preconceived ideas of textile art. When we conceived of this exhibition, we had the 4 artists in mind. We considered that their works complement each other and contrast each other in a diverse enough way to showcase some different mediums and some different techniques within the textile arts. We love the contrast of Alice's soft tufting with the coarse appearance of Lizzie or Charlotte's weaving, and then Diane's beautifully felted pieces bring that pop of colour. So within the space, we wanted to play with their works to complement and create a flow around the room. So when you enter the space, you're first greeted with Diane's vessels, which I think is a great example of how textile art can cross through the art world. I think that people weren't expecting to see vase-shaped pieces, and it's also something that's reflected within Alice's work, where she incorporates vessel shapes. These pieces are really bold and inviting to draw people in to see the texture of the pieces. In her felted vases, you see the flow of the colour, how the fibres intertwine with each other. And I think it's a really great start to the exhibition for people to readjust their assumptions about textile art. On the first wall, we feature Charlotte Wakefield's woven pieces. So Charlotte is a Margate-based artist who takes a lot of her inspiration from architecture and the landscape surrounding her. Within her works, we see the free-flowing forms and this bold use of the texture within the pieces. So combining the different yarns such as mohair, cotton, alpaca wool, lamb's wool creates a real dynamism throughout the piece, where these different materials play together, creating shade, light, texture. In the 2 pieces behind me, we wanted to feature them early on in the exhibition, as hanging in this free way really changes how we view textiles. It's a really fun way to display textiles. I love how they contrast with the wood and this natural feel of the neutral tones and the grain of the wood. It just brings that sense of warmth and fun to a space. There's 2 aspects of Charlotte's work that stood out to us. The first being its sustainability. So Charlotte uses dead stock yarn from mills and from companies. So these are the parts of the materials and threads that would have been thrown away. By reclaiming these waste products, we can understand Charlotte's work for its sustainability. I know that she's keen to show that her work is eco-friendly, and this is something that we can appreciate in textile art in general. There is a sustainable factor to it. These are materials that are natural, and in particular in her work, by saving these offcuts and these waste products, there's an aspect that I think we can all get on board with at this point in time of reusing and appreciating the materials that are already around us in the world. The second aspect that intrigued us with her work is, if you've seen a loom before, the weaving process is insanely technical and precise, but Charlotte creates and weaves in a really free, flowing manner. So when she sits down at the loom, she doesn't know exactly where the piece is going to go, just creating naturally, free as the piece goes. So this contrast of a really technical and complex technique that creates such a free-flowing and unique artwork. So as you move around the room, we've then featured a mixture of Charlotte's pieces here in the frames. It was great to have these pieces here to showcase the mixture of work that she has, so the contrasts of the pops of colour or the experimentation with the more muted colours. But what's really great is seeing the different ways that she uses the texture and the weavings. So we can see in something like this, the mixture of the tighter weave and the looser weave, creating a different sense within the material. And then we can see the contrast of the softer looking weave or the tighter, coarser looking material. And I think it's just really great to be able to get up close to these works and see those textures and how the materials play with each other. In front of and to the side of Charlotte, we've featured Diane Randall's felted works. It was really great for us to bring in, as I've mentioned, her vessel forms, but also to showcase her 2D wall-mounted works. So the pieces behind and to the side of me are her hand-felted pieces on linen. Again, this use of natural material really brings a sense of softness to the works, but Diane contrasts this with these pops of colour, which play beautifully together. So the contrast of pinks with greens, or yellows with blues. And it really allows the eye to fall around the work, and then it draws you in to look closer at the texture, which again is the beauty that we're showcasing within this textile art exhibition. So Diane is a Norwich-based artist, and her work is primarily inspired by natural forms, which are most often seascapes and rocks and sand and motifs that we find around the ocean. So we can see that in her vessels, the smaller pieces which are almost shaped like rocks, or within the free-flowing forms on the 2D work, which again feel like islandscapes surrounded by oceans or pebbles within the sand. I think that in her works, bringing that natural aspect, it totally translates through this natural medium. All of Diane's works are made with 100% merino wool, and I think that this really translates to the vessels, as we can get up close and see the individual fibres. On this piece and the bigger, colourful pieces that are similar, we can see how the fibres freely flow across the form. I wanted to highlight this piece as the blue fibres coming up like this really feel like a wave coming across the work, or the greens feel like this soft moss or seaweed. And I think knowing her inspiration comes a lot from oceans and time spent in the landscapes around Norfolk, I think this is a beautiful example of how her pieces translate through this medium. Throughout the show, people have really been drawn to Diane's vessels, and I think it's the variety that they bring, the different colours, shapes, sizes, but it's also this idea that it's not how we imagine textile art to look and be, and yet we're able to get so close and see the materiality of the work. Some of them, when they get larger, they sort of give in their own weight, and we see this buckling at the bottom, that they really feel as if they have a life of their own. And people can imagine the feel of it, or actually physically feel it. And I think that this soft nature, it translates in a contrast to what we have in our mind of what a vase should be. In contrast to that sort of idea that we see her vessels through, Diane's wall-mounted pieces, I actually think almost from a distance could feel like an abstract painting. But then as you get up closer, again, you can see the texture. You can see each place where she's had to poke the felt or pull the fibers. And I think that, again, it challenges how we see textile art and allowing us to see how these can be integrated into any space. As the visitor continues round, they're greeted by this area that we've created with Lizzie Kimbley's artworks. When curating the space, we often start with one particular idea, and the pieces then all fall around it and complement it and flow from that space. So this area came together in a real collaborative way that me and Marie enjoyed playing with the shadows of the piece and how the light hits it. When we visited Lizzie's studio and we saw the works, we knew that we wanted some of them to hang. But her pieces are so fragile that we knew we wanted to create an area that people could see this free hanging piece playing with the light, and yet it would be protected. So this area came together in that way. I think this is really great for people to be able to get up close to this work. So you can see all of this hand cordage that Lizzie has made and see the fibers, how they fall away and how each section almost has its own life. And as much as we wanted to highlight this piece behind me, it was great to put her baskets in front and to highlight a bit more what Lizzie does. So Lizzie Kimbley is a Norfolk-based artist, and primarily she's interested in the sustainability of textiles. We see her use, quite like Charlotte does, discarded materials, offcuts, or like the baskets here, natural materials. Her pieces are insanely detailed, and she creates all of this cordage by hand, and the pieces are weaved again, in a very technically and detailed manner. So alongside the interest in sustainability and the use of natural materials, Lizzie is hugely inspired by walking around the Norfolk landscape. She cites quite often the similarities between walking and weaving, so these meditative, repetitive motions that we all do can be translated into the medium of creating through a loom. Alongside her woven pieces and pieces that are created on the loom, we featured pieces that she's created hand cordage and hand woven, such as the basketry, or stitched works that showcase her reclaiming of materials to hand stitch them to create larger works. And I think it's just been really great for visitors to see the diversity of the techniques in which Lizzie has mastered. Along the back wall, we featured these two works, Walking from Marsden 1 and 2, opposite Repurposed 1, so the hanging piece. I think they beautifully contrast and oppose each other, but have the similarities to create a space to walk through Lizzie's works, to then approach the piece behind me, which is hand-stitched and showcases the use of natural dyes and repurposed materials, so these are off-cut materials that once again would have been discarded. And then the pieces in the frames behind me, which bring in elements of the wood, so other materials into the weave, which again showcase her use of the natural materials, contrasted and unified within the techniques that she creates with. Throughout the exhibition, people have been really appreciative of these works for their subtle use of colour, their soft, delicate use of the techniques, but also they have a real power to them, and they allow us to think about our own connection to landscapes and materials. To end Lizzie's works, we've featured her piece More Than We Have. I think it very much contrasts the rest of her works in the colour and the style, but it really ties all of her ideas into one piece. So Lizzie collected emergency wrappers from the Who Gives a Crap Eco Toilet Paper Company. She did this through shout-outs to the community online and through friends and family to gather these emergency wrappers. So the emergency wrappers are featured in the toilet paper when the user gets to the end or as a reminder that they need to reorder. By taking these wrappers, Lizzie then created the cordage and created this netted work behind me. These again were pieces of paper that would have been just discarded, but Lizzie has collected them to create a piece that's powerful and draws these ideas of consumerism to once again allow us to consider the objects we interact with and how we treat materials on a daily basis. The final section of the exhibition features the works by Alice Liptrot. So Alice is a Kent-based artist who built up a successful knitwear company, but has now translated that into her artworks. So she combines this traditional heritage of craft into wildly contemporary, innovative punch needle and tufting artworks. The pieces behind me were all created this year, and I think they showcase a real great contrast of how her pieces can look. So the one to my left here, we feature the really sort of fluffy and deep textural side of tufting. And then the pieces to my right here have the more coarse side of the tufting, so the harder back, which creates a tighter feel, less loose depth, and yet a real beautiful contrast of a coarse material. Alice has two sides to the works in a way. There's the sides with the muted colour tones of the browns, beiges, which use the undyed wool of sheep in the Romney marshes around her. And then we have the British wool that she uses with the more colourful aspects, so the deeper greens or the beautiful pops of blue in these works. In these ones, I think what's really prominent and strong about the works is that contrast of those natural browns that we almost expect from textile works, and especially sustainable, crafted and sourced materials, but against this really vivid blue that makes the shapes of these sort of vessels or forms really pop out of the works. As I've mentioned, she contrasts this traditional heritage that textiles have with a really modern approach. So the works feel really fresh. The materiality really plays into this contrasted idea of what we should hang on our walls. So they have a real soft texture to them. And something that people said throughout this exhibition is how much it really draws them in. They just want to touch it, you want to feel it. It has a real tactile presence. And I think that that's what's really strong about these works. If they come into any space, they command attention and they draw you in. In this exhibition in particular, her work has been catching a lot of attention for these reasons. But we've also noticed that she's drawn a lot of attention from collectors when we've featured her in the art fair in London, for example, as I think she's doing something totally different. She's not creating textiles in a way that we're expecting them to be created. These three pieces by Alice have really stood out to us in particular due to the real free-flowing feel of them, the way that the shapes move across and intertwine with each other, and this use of the two-tone colours. I think they really have a presence and a feel that you would want to bring into a space. The smaller works by Alice featured in the exhibition are all framed in this oak, and it's a really tight framing that makes it feel like the pieces are almost flowing out of the frame. It gives a real life to the work, and I think again it shows another way in which textile can be presented. The last work we wanted to highlight is Wobbly Portal by Alice. And I think that people have been really commenting on this work throughout the exhibition for its composition and its use of colour and texture. Throughout the work, we see this contrast of the tighter punch needle work and the looser work, which really creates a texture across the piece. But the way in which Alice has used these shapes of colour really draw us into the work and make it quite a standout piece that people have really been highlighting. The doors are now closed on Tactile. I hope that you've enjoyed this video and it's given you a bit of an insight into the exhibition if you weren't able to make it in person. As always, we want to thank everyone who did attend. It's been wildly appreciated and it's been great to see the responses to all of the artists' works. If you're interested in seeing the pieces more in depth, you can flick through the exhibition catalogue, which is available on our website, or reach out to us either via DM on Instagram or email, and we can share any pieces with you. For now, we've closed the doors, and thank you for watching.